Hey, I'm Doc Palmer. I'm the author of McGraw-Hill's best-selling reliability book, the Maintenance Planning and Scheduling Handbook. Maintenance planning and scheduling is a major part of maintenance and reliability, and definitely a best practice. It's one of the most difficult to achieve because it's so commonly misunderstood. Plans do not tell expert craftsmen how to work on things. The purpose of planning is to run a Deming cycle to constantly upgrade job plans so we have better head starts. We don't want a craftsperson to ever feel like they have to blindly follow a job plan. And then scheduling is a little tricky too. We want to fully load schedules to defeat Parkinson's law to achieve the true purpose of scheduling, which is to complete more work than we would normally complete. Most people underload the schedule because they feel like the purpose of schedule is to complete the schedule, and that allows room for reactive work if you underload the schedule. But you end up not completing as much work as you could complete because you're not defeating Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law is the amount of work assigned expands to fill the amount of time available. So you're not, if you underload the schedule, even though you have good schedule compliance, you're not doing more work, which is that proactive work to defeat reactive work to begin with. So those are topics for other days. We've covered those, and I'm sure we'll cover those again. Last week with my expert artwork, we laid out a rough conceptual generic job workflow, and I wanted to make some comments about it today. I'll quickly go through it with a minimum of comments, and then I want to make 4 cautionary comments and then talk about the purpose of planning in such a way, what is a planner supposed to produce. So to begin with, we want to make it really easy for people to write work requests. If you see something, say something, and if it's too complicated to tell us about it, people won't tell us about it. It's got to be easy to write work requests, and we want great work requests. The supervisor's job, and there's a cautionary note here, which I made the C there with a diamond last time. The supervisor's job is not to rubber stamp or write the work request for their people. It's to train their people to write good work requests. We don't want a work request to just say, see Joe Brown. What does that mean? Or pump broke. We want as much detail as possible to help us guide us to a solution. And then also, we don't mind the requester giving us a solution, but we want them to tell us what the symptoms are as well. Some of these operators have been out there a long time, and mechanics, if they write a work request, they pretty much know what we need to do. But we want to record the symptoms. Hey, this pump's jumping up and down off the foundation. It's leaking oil and water and everything like crazy. We probably need to replace it. That's a much better work request than we need to replace the pump. We want to know all that stuff just for our records and sharing information. We're going from the requester to the executor. We want to share as much information as we can, and it's got to go through this system. So the primary job of the supervisor of the requester is to encourage them to write good work requests. And I will say, if in the planning department or morning meeting we start rejecting too many work requests, people just say, fine, I won't tell you about it. I'll let it continue to happen until the plant burns down. Yes, they will. So we want to work on their supervisor to encourage the supervisors to encourage their people to write those good work requests that we need. Charles Kettering, an architect, a businessman that lived 100 years ago, said, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. You've probably heard that quote all your life. That comes from Charles Kettering. Then the work request, new work order, goes into the morning meeting. The purpose of a morning meeting is to generally know what's going on and also generally look at the priorities. It might be that what's important to a particular requester is not that important in the big scheme of things with everything that goes on. So a priority 1 might get downgraded to a priority 2 or a priority 3. Or it might be priority 4, somebody in the morning meeting with a different perspective. So that's pretty important. We need to turn that into a priority 1. So the priority might get changed either way. So generally know what's going on. Generally, maybe adjust the priorities. The purpose of a gatekeeper is also to generally adjust the priorities. It's usually a senior operator that's been around for a while, and it's just, no, that's not that important. Now, hey, that's pretty important. We need to change the priority of that. Some people have this morning meeting and a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper, on the fly is out there in the field. You can talk to them. They're seeing new work requests. So it's not just waiting for the morning meeting. The cautionary note with the morning meeting is those get out of hand. It should be a little 10 or 15-minute meeting after the crew and everybody's gone to work. It's not the purpose of that morning meeting to decide what we're going to work on today. That should have been decided the day before when the supervisor puts the schedule. Everything happens during the night. Supervisor gets called by the right people and they get people working on the right thing. There might be some adjustment of what we're working on today based on the morning meeting, but that is not the purpose of the morning meeting. We don't want the crews sitting around, terrible productivity, waiting on what comes out of the morning meeting. We also don't want those morning meetings to take too long. You need a really strong person leading that meeting. You'll have people starting to talk, well, I remember that happened 4 years ago. We had to get a crane in to fix the crane that broke, and this morning meeting leader needs to, hey, we can talk about that later. Okay, next. Anybody see anything out of whack? Here's the list of new work. Okay, I'll see everybody tomorrow. So it's just a quick come together of maintenance leaders and operations leaders, plant leaders. Here's what's going on. See anything out of whack? Okay, I'll see everybody tomorrow. 80% of our work should be coming through that routine level. Goes into the planning for screening, make sure it's going to the right person. Goes into the planning department. I've circled that. I want to talk about that some more, but I want to finish the cautionary notes. Supervisor's job is to train people to write good work requests. Morning meeting is to generally look at the priorities, see what's going on. It's not to get carried away and take up everybody's time. For returning equipment to operations, there's a cautionary note here. The best time to test something, there's industry trend to test everything. I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. But if we do want to test something, we have to coordinate with operations. And remember, we're good at specializing maintenance and operations. We're poor at coordinating. Things fall in the cracks. If operations wants to test something, or if the maintenance person wants operations to test something, we would prefer it be done when the maintenance person is still there with their tools and toolbox. So if we want to pressurize that strainer to see if it's leaking, that'd be the time to do it. Hey, it's leaking. Okay, let's isolate again. Let's tighten it up. Oh, I can see exactly what you're talking about. I can see actually where it's leaking. You can't wait till the end of the day to tell operations, hey, I finished 3 jobs. You can test them. I'll be here for another half hour. If you're a maintenance person and you're going to finish a job about 10 o'clock, maybe at 9:30, let operations know, hey, we're going to be finished in about a half hour. If you want to test it, we'll still be here with our tools. That would be a good time for you to test it. And then you're going to finish another job about 1 o'clock, maybe about 12:30 or right before you go to lunch. Hey, we'll probably finish that job right after lunch. We got a little bit more to do on it. If you want to test it, probably about 12:30 would be a good time to be there. Or we want you to test it. Can you be there at 12:30? That would be a good time for us. And you're into your shifts maybe 4:30. You're going to finish a job, you're thinking about 3:30. Let operations know about 3 o'clock. Hey, we're going to finish probably about 3:30. It'd be a great time for you to check it and everything. So you can't just wait till 3:30 and say, I finished 3 jobs today. And then, as always, supervisors free in the field is always great for doing that coordination. We've got to free up supervisors from being in their office. The industry rule of thumb is 75%. Out of an 8-hour day, a first-line supervisor should be out in the field 6 hours just going from job to job to job to job, helping out, coordinate, see what's going on. The final cautionary note is on the feedback. Feedback is such a critical item. I'm going to give you 6 things that will help feedback. But at this point right here, I want to make a note. We want the craftsperson to write the feedback. They saw it. They can write it down. Immediate when they thought it. That first line supervisor over the craftsperson, that's one of the major items out of the 6. If the supervisor thinks feedback is important, we'll probably get feedback. If the supervisor doesn't think it's important, we probably won't get the feedback. And the supervisor, we don't want the supervisor writing the feedback. We want the craftsperson to write the feedback. Now, the supervisor might edit that or add a note or clarify or something, but we want that craftsperson to see where they saw the situation, let them write the feedback. Then, on the planning, the job of a planner is not to be planning. It's to finish planning work orders. This is a psycho-philosophical, semantical concept. But first of all, the reason we have mechanics or electricians or instrument techs is not to be working on things. It's to finish working on things. They're like a little assembly line. What do they produce? Well, completed work orders. We want them to complete one work order after the other. We don't want them working on it so long that we never finish anything. But quality's first. I get that. But the reason we have mechanics is to finish work orders. The reason we have planners is to crank out waiting to schedule planned jobs. That's their job, to crank out planned jobs. And one of the KPIs I like for a planner is they should have a very minimal unplanned backlog. These approved work orders, or if you have a status of waiting for planning, those should be a very minimum. When the planners get them, they need to knock them out. We've got to feed this scheduling monster that's going to drain our backlogs and run out of work orders. And if we don't plan these jobs, we're going to work those jobs on an unplanned basis, and we're not going to be able to fill up schedules with planned work. So I was mentioning that in this plant in a Caribbean island company, and I mentioned in front of 30 people, the purpose of a planner is to crank out planned work orders. And this manager in the back of the room stood up and said, "That's the piece we've been missing. Our planners are always busy. I'm not sure they're cranking out planned work orders so we can do the rest of the program." So I just thought that was worthy to note. And I mentioned to the manager that said that, anytime spring, fall, winter, summer, you want to invite me down to the Caribbean, I can give you another tidbit like that. So that's the purpose of planning, is to create planned work orders that are ready to go. Crank those work orders out. That's also a mark of planner maturity. They can't spend all their time making perfect work orders. If you had 2 perfect work orders and 8 work orders you didn't get to, and now we work them on an unplanned basis, that's not what we want. We want, just say, 10 best as you can planned work orders. So we've got to get those through. And the fact that that's minimal tells me that we're cranking out planned work orders. It's a mark of planner maturity. If you have a bunch of unplanned work, you have to be less perfect than if you have just a few unplanned work orders. So a planner really has to understand they can't be perfect and do the best they can. The best job they can with the best detail they can, subject to the constraint, you have to plan all the work. So we want that approved or waiting for planning group to be as small as possible. And we want to continually crank out those work orders there. So that's my thoughts on that. We'll continue to talk about workflow, codes, the work order system, blanket work orders and stuff, future sessions. That's basic there. And again, I will stand to the side. And on your keyboard, if you press the Windows key and print screen at the same time, you can actually get a copy of that. Or you could buy a copy of the handbook, and it's nice and neat. But this is my scribbling on the board. Thanks for letting me be part of your maintenance family and hear my 2 cents, and we'll see you next time. God bless.